Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
So do you want to maybe kick off with an introduction to who you are and your background, and then we'll go a bit more into some of the things we were going to talk about.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I suppose a little bit about me. So I'm the head of IT at the Southampton Football Club. So I suppose it's quite an interesting role. There are kind of very few technology roles in elite football. Especially Premier League football. So for me, it's really interesting because I like football, and I've always loved watching football. I've always been a fan of Southampton. So you might say it was a bit of a dream opportunity to work at the football club that I'm a fan of. But as it turns out, it just adds to the stress of working in a sort of technology leadership role. So there's that. I suppose it's in terms of the club itself, it's kind of a family sort of centric club. We only have about 400 staff, so it's kind of a medium-sized business really. And I've been in the role 18 months, so most of that time is the pandemic has been happening, and I think obviously I came into the role just before the pandemic. And obviously had a lot of plans, had a lot of ideas, and wanted to obviously get out and meet people in the business and get the opportunity to really, just really understand everything. And then it was about 3 months I had to stop and sit and work remotely, which is where we are still. So I think that's kind of been probably the biggest challenge overall is still, that remote leadership and the remote role I've had to kind of take up. And while we have been, we've had meetings in the stadium and other places, most of my work's been remote. So that's kind of been the bigger challenge. Although I'm not a stranger to remote working in my previous role, and my previous company, it was pretty much an international role, and therefore I was always working across different time zones and remotely as well. So that's not new to me. So in terms of my current role, it's pretty much traditional IT mostly. So the football club use a lot of traditional IT in terms of infrastructure, so networking, servers, cloud storage, digital applications, other things, end user, and then there's lots of other sort of technology now that kind of intersects and into different departments across the club. So we have a small team of 14, and my role is really just to be accountable for all the technologies that we look after. A bit of my background, really, I've worked in IT for probably about 20 something years now, and I've always worked in, I suppose I started out in IT as a service desk kind of support role. So the early part of my career was always a support, trying to build up my experience. And then I suppose the more recently, I worked in higher education, in various technology leadership roles there. So for 8 years, that's what I was doing before the role at Southampton, and that kind of helped me build up my experience in this, I suppose, a leadership role. And over the years, like any technology leader, you're exposed to lots of different applications, lots of different technologies, different types of industries and the way they operate. So kind of gone through that whole time of I suppose what used to be legacy IT to now where we are. So it's been a really interesting journey.
So I'm very interested. You say you are a fan of the club. So,
yeah.
So how did you get the job then? Were you at a fan? Was it a fan connection that got you in, or?
No, not at all. So I suppose I was just in the market for a new role. I think I was sort of in the process of updating my CV and looking in the market. and it just happened. Saw the role come up at the football club on LinkedIn, and I just thought, wow, that would be great. But I also thought, it's a high profile, although it's, as I say, it's a medium-sized company, but it's a high-profile company because it's a football Premier League club. And I think the public perception is that, every Premier League club is swimming in cash. So, my initial perception of kind of applying for the role would be, oh, crikey, I don't know if I'm experienced enough to do that, or, there'll be so many applications. I thought, okay, I'll apply, but, I'll carry on focusing on other things. So yeah, just that's how it started. And I think being a fan really has no bearing on whether or not you either understand the club or get a role in the club. It's not applicable really. I think from my side now working there, it's, as I say, when the team are playing, it just becomes more stressful because it's my work as well as football stress. So that's the only real difference really. But 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, it's a very sort of, I suppose, not normal business, but there are normal business operations.
Yeah. But I suppose your knowledge of football helps in conversations with people around, solving their problems with technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've always been involved. I've always played football as well. So it's probably worth saying that I've been involved in amateur football for, as long as I could probably kick a ball. And I've also done some coaching and stuff as well. So I think from that side of things, there's an appreciation of the requirements of some of our users, because we do have probably half the people that work at the club are based around football and coaching and, the medical side, the sports science, the analysts, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I absolutely understand that they have completely different needs to anyone maybe sat at a desk, because they don't have a desk, or they don't sit down much. So yeah, they have very different technology requirements. But I suppose when I was playing football, I didn't have any technology requirements myself, because it was just, a very sort of wet and windy local recreation ground that I used to play at, rather than an elite sports facility like we have. But it is really interesting. I think one of the things I'm really keen to continue doing in the role that's not really had the opportunity is kind of get over to, the football side of things, because of the pandemic, they've had to be quarantined almost. So a lot of the staff that work at football, especially anyone around the first team, because the Premier League have a lot of requirements for COVID regulations and making sure that the players are tested regularly. My team and myself and a lot of other people, we're not able to go there and sort of be near them, especially in the last, since the pandemic really. So yeah, it's been, I suppose, looking forward to hopefully next season. So from the end of this summer onwards, just going back over there and, working with the stakeholders a bit more closely.
Yeah, because I think that, so my frame of reference is more baseball. Specifically from the data point of view and analytics. And I would think that would be the most fascinating thing to be working with the teams on is how do they analyze competition, specific other players, game plans, but building, Southampton solutions for it, as opposed to buying something off the rack to an extent. So how has that worked out for you then? How involved are you with the sort of, if you've got the internal infrastructure, which is, back end, back office, that sort of stuff, to the actual teams? Is it do they do their own thing and then there's sort of a guideline and parameters you give them, or do they have to give them everything they need to do their jobs, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, mainly everything, they use everything that we support. So whether it's a kind of corporate tool, but they also have their own systems and databases that my team supports. So I actually have a couple of people in my team that are focused on the data side. So they look after all the databases and they support the data requirements for some of the coaching and medical and football side of things. So there's lots of data that they capture in football. So whether it's medical data, whether it's performance data. So there's, as an example, there's a system called Stat Sports where a player will wear a bib with a GPS device, and it records their effort during a training game or an actual game, and all of that data comes in. And there's an analyst team that work there that obviously try and make decisions around that data. So I have a team, someone in my team that supports that database and works with that analyst team to either deal with this, whether it's data cleansing or validation or that sort of thing, or just the visualizations and just making it a bit easier for them to read. There's some really, really interesting stuff as well. They measure the firmness of the grass as well. So they have an actual they have a physical tool. It's like a hammer that they drop on the grass. And that used to be a manual process. So they used to drop the hammer. It used to give a digital reading, but they used to write that down on a bit of paper, and they would drop it at various points around the pitch, because a whole football pitch can be very different, but depending on the drainage and the sun and everything. So once they've got all that data, they used to kind of go back in as they could see where the hard bit of the pitch was, or how soft it was in general. But now we've actually digitized that. So the hammer actually connects to our Wi-Fi. It automatically sends the reading there to a database, and then they can just go back into the office and actually see that all visualized straight away. They can get that information.
So is it a coordinate system for where you're dropping the hammer, so that even though it's on the Wi-Fi, which grid you're on the pitch?
Yeah, so I think they set that the hammer to whatever location they may have on the pitch, wherever they are, whether it's the halfway line or the area, or wherever they're recording. Yes, and then it feeds back in, and basically the ground staff do that, but then the coaches can then read that data, and then they can decide, do we want to use this pitch for training today? Because it may be too hard. If it's too hard, it might mean the players pick up injuries. Though sometimes they need a hard pitch to do some other stuff on. They need a soft area of the pitch sometimes to do, players that are coming back from injury. So it's really, really important to them to actually understand that. There's some really interesting stuff that we do around that. And then there's all the medical data as well. There's a gym, which, as you can imagine, most I suppose measuring equipment. So they have to see how high they can jump, or to see how much they can press. And most of those have a digital readout that they can either take, or some of them are automated, so they can see those readings. Really interesting.
Yeah, the mind's boggling. I'm thinking about all the, just if you're figuring out on the pitch alone, if you're playing against a certain competitor, you might make a harder pitch because they're used to a softer pitch. It gives you an edge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Much like a cricket pitch would be, designed for fast bowlers versus spinners. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that as an option, to be quite honest. And
they do that on the actual stadium pitch as well. So before the home game, if we are playing at home, they'll do exactly the same on that. So they know, they can tell the coaching staff, actually the pitch, it's rained overnight, it's very soft here today, or whatever it might be. They've got sprinklers as well. They can make it different. They can put more water on it if they need to. So it gives them that option.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it would be considered cheating if you were to, say, water your side of the pitch more than, if you know that you're going to be on the one side, and make it harder to run on that side. Makes it more difficult to strike.
Yeah, I don't know of any. Yeah, I think it does. So I think, you sometimes hear managers, if they've not had a great result, complain about the pitch if they're playing away normally. And yeah, there's been instances of maybe the underdog team making the pitch waterlogged, so more difficult for better team to pass and things like that. So, but yeah, for us, it's more, I think, just around driving better performance from our players and trying to give us the best opportunity to win. Whatever, it's these small things at the sort of elite sport, and this is kind of what I've learned over the time I've been in the role is sort of, everything's competitive. So, small kind of measures and gains can really have a big impact. So they're always looking at new things, I suppose.
Yeah, look, it makes sense. I mean, it's, as I said, my reference is baseball, and that's always been a game of numbers and a game of inches. You know, can you jump that extra half an inch to catch a ball that's been hit over your head or something like that? And the stats around, how a player reacts in certain situations. You know, the sort of a clutch player versus a non-clutch player. So I can see that competitive nature, translates to every sport really. And then what have you done around something like the stadium, for example? Do you guys do stuff there with your staff in mind, and maybe actual fans coming to the venue?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much there really. I suppose I'll start with the staff. So like a lot of sports teams that have a stadium, staff normally work in the stadium as their head office. So the same for us. Our stadium is also our head office, which kind of gives us a very unique environment in which to work in. We have a fairly normal corporate office area in the stadium. So your normal sort of desks and Wi-Fi and breakout rooms, meeting rooms, all that kind of thing. So we support all of that. On the sort of fan side of things, we have sort of future plans for some more exciting technology. So at the moment, we have a new turnstile system to provide us with a better way of getting fans into the stadium, and also a ticketing platform, which we've recently changed. So hopefully the fan experience for buying tickets is more improved online for them. We recently launched a new app for fans. So the aim of the app is really for us to be able to engage more digitally with the fans. And there are sort of further plans to enhance it on a match day. So, they can use the app to do certain activities and maybe buy things on a match day, and just engage, in more depth with the club. So there's those products. There's other physical things as well. So we have hospitality Wi-Fi. We don't have in-bowl Wi-Fi yet. So most fans will find, if they sit in the stadium when there's a full stadium, due to the density, they struggle to get 4G or 5G. So we are looking at plans to give them a service there, whether it's Wi-Fi or sort of 4G, 5G. A lot of football stadiums, unfortunately, in the UK, we're slightly behind the US, I think, in that. So a lot of the NFL stadiums have exceptional Wi-Fi, exceptional mobile signal, but a lot of the old, because football stadiums in the UK are quite old, most of them, and ours. A lot of people think that Southampton St Mary's is a new stadium, but it's 20 over 20 years old. So it was obviously built before the digital age, so to speak. So it hasn't got the underlying infrastructure. But yeah, we are looking at that as a project for the next couple of years or so. And yeah, we've recently this in the last couple of weeks and the last few months, we've been working on a project to replace the big screens. So like a lot of stadiums, our stadium already has the big digital screens at either end. So fans are going to obviously view with replays and adverts and obviously the score and other things as well. The ones we had were nearly 10 years old, so we're replacing them this summer. So we've had a huge project to look at improving that as a service. We're also, as part of that, we're putting new displays in the concourse for fans, so they'll have bigger screens to look at when they go for food and drink at half time. Also some other LED screens within the concourse and around the bowl, just to give fans better engagement and things like that. So that would be I think that would be quite a big enhancement for fans when they do return. And we are looking at fans hopefully returning from June onwards if the UK government restrictions and roadmap kind of fulfills itself. But that's what we're hopeful for.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine this is almost a good opportunity in a way to do those sorts of upgrades, because you don't have to worry about the fixtures being there as well. But I can also understand you want your fans there, and that app experience has become almost a critical thing now to your experience. You almost expect to have an app for the like, going to watch rugby or going to watch football. You want an app that does everything: pre-order your beers, pre-order your food. It's good data for you from a consumer point of view, but also from a service provider point of view, because you know what's coming.
Yeah.
So more predictability. I could definitely see that working in your favor. And then, I mean, what is your sort of, if you had to compare yourself to other football organizations, I mean, who are the guys to really try and emulate as being the top dogs?
I mean, I think, obviously it goes without saying that, we're not a big six club. That's just the nature of our history and where we are. And I think a Premier League, any Premier League club is normally a well-run club, and for us, it's just continuing to do that. Obviously we will look at other people that have had success, and how do we achieve that, or how do we look to that. But we obviously have our own means and our own sort of club strategy to follow, and that's and our values as well. So that's always important to us. And I think as well, fan base. We're never going to be, I suppose, like Manchester United, where they've got apparently 1 billion fans globally. That's just completely out of unattainable, really. But I think from a technology perspective, myself and all the other technology leaders across the Premier League and in other sports, we do speak online regularly, whether it's just on LinkedIn or just building our own relationships. So I have already visited other stadiums and looked at their solutions and what they're doing. There are some stadiums that have been recently built. So the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, for example, is probably the best example of a football stadium in the world at the moment in terms of the way it's been built and around technology. So I had an opportunity to go there and look at all that, and we're really just sort of finding out what's working best for them and how we can kind of achieve some of that at St Mary's. I think for us it's always just work within our means, but also look at what our priorities are and what our fans need and what they expect as well.
Do you interact much with the fans? I mean, do you have like I'm trying to think of the word now, but like a chatbot sort of interface where you hear from the fans what they're looking for? So my team not so much, but we have a supporter services team. They interact with. I don't think we have a chatbot, so to speak, at the moment. That's something that we're looking at rolling out. But mostly it's been sort of social media communication, email communication. We have just rolled out the app, so looking at how we can communicate with fans in the app. I think we found a lot of our fans that they like to either communicate or put their views on social media. So we have a media team that manage all of that stuff. So that's really important, and that goes without saying for any other football club. And then obviously once we get fans back, it'd be great to engage with them, in that sort of digital space that we now have in the stadium, and just see what we can do with that, because we haven't had fans for over a year now. We had a small number of fans in December, but it was only 2,000. So sure. Really looking at getting people back in, and looking forward to getting people back in. And what's the capacity of your stadium?
It's 30,000. So
okay, so that's 2,000.
In terms of Premier League standard, it's probably sort of in the mid-range, really. I think most of the stadiums will be between 30,000-40,000. Some of the bigger stadiums will be upwards of 60,000 to 80,000.
Yeah, I can imagine that having 2,000 there would almost be, I don't want to say laughable, but you'd hardly see them for all the chairs.
That was interesting. So the government allowed us to have fans. It was a very small window that we had between the November 2020 lockdown and the December kind of tiers that they brought out. And Southampton was in a I think tier 2, which meant that we were allowed to have 2,000 fans. But it was we were hoping at that point to build up on coming into the new year. This year we were hoping it would increase, but obviously then we had the January lockdown as well. So it's been, as I say, we've had the door shut since then.
Yeah, I know it's. I think we all wish for the normality of watching sport live, which we all took for granted for a bit. I think we'll take it at least we won't take it for granted for a while. Maybe the next generations will.
Yeah.
Now, going back a little bit to the data side of things, you talked about one thing was StatPro, I think was what you mentioned.
Stat Sports, yeah.
Sports.
That's one of the systems that we have.
Well, what are the other ones that you guys use, and is there quite a big focus on collecting data to use it as part of decision making?
Yeah, so I think it's probably Stat Sports is probably the best example. Really, there are other data that we have from any football fans that follow the Premier League will know about Opta. So that's a really kind of big way that we can, or a big repository of data that we can access. So Opta collect event information from football games. So they then sell that data to anyone that wants it. So whether it's broadcasters or football clubs themselves, to then make decisions. So yeah, we have our own. The Stat Sports one is a GPS. It's basically a GPS solution. So the data is mostly sort of GPS, and we can see the player. It's linked to an individual player, so we can see the player's effort. We can see how fast they were running or how they weren't, where they were on the pitch, that kind of thing. That sort of heat mapping. The Opta, and there's other providers of data that do event information in games. So it can be used for our own team. We can see how many passes a certain player made, how many shots they had on target, that kind of thing. But also, we use it for opposition as well, so we can understand how an opposition plays, and that data is publicly available. So Opta sell that to anyone, and they make it available. You can probably go and search that data. There is other companies as well. I think StatsBomb is another one that do the same thing. Yeah, and it's really just a case of, it depends on how you as a football club want to use that data and what you actually think you need from that. Because, as I say, it's available. It's just it's a mass of event information.
So, do you have a data science team that's looking at that all the time or asking questions of it? And
yeah, we do. So, on the football side, they have various people that work in data, and whether it's sort of sports science, but also sort of we have a data insights team as well. They're now called. And yeah, they work on all that data. They provide analysis to coaching staff, medical staff, on whether it be an upcoming match or training or helping a player return from injury or any of that kind of stuff. They have all that data, and they manage that accordingly. Yeah, so most football clubs have that, and I think historically we've kind of been at the forefront of that, probably more so over the years. So we have quite a large team involved in that, and we're fairly mature now, so we're able to sort of use the data as much as possible to make the right decisions.
Cool. And with having the data, are you finding that your users that are using that data are becoming more technically savvy? So they're what I'm trying to get to is almost a self-service part to this at some stage, or is it very much still a separation between the business user and the data science team?
Yeah, I suppose if you speak to my team that work with the data, they'd probably say there's obviously some users that are exceptional with the data, and the team that work in the data insights team and the analysts that we have, they have to have qualifications in all of the sort of data platforms that you have now, whether it's Power BI or whatever it is. So they have those skills, but there are other end users that work in other roles that just want to see a simple dashboard or whatever it might be of that data. So I think we just have to work with those users. I know that the guys in my team that work with those individuals, they have spent a lot of time giving them information, training, and that self-service approach is something that we want to look at going forward. But yeah, it's very much down to, I think there are now, as you know, there's so many platforms out there that you can read data through and get information from. So I think our users are definitely becoming more savvy around it, and they also have to have that information. They have to have those skills and training.
Is there any advice you'd give to a person coming into your sort of role that would help them to be prepared?
What in an IT sense or from a data side?
Data, IT, going into a sporting environment.
I think for me, I mean, I didn't have any background in sport, so I think there's a lot of people that are really interested in getting into sport because, like me, they're a fan, they're a consumer, and they think it's they see it up as a very glamorous career. But I think the key thing is really just to, if you're interested in working in sport, is really just to try and understand how sport works. And if you're interested in working in data, there's a lot of books on sports data now and sports science and things like that, or data science, sorry. And I, as a fan, I read those things, but just to have a general understanding is really useful. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the key thing. I think for me, to be honest with you, probably why I got the role was based on people, my experience of working with people. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, we are a family orientated club, and we're very much focusing on the people that we have as staff and also the people that are our fans. And we've got some really strong values around that. So, for me, it was all around, I want to work in that environment and work with people and develop people. And one of our values is potential into excellence, and that's basically means that you've got someone with potential and giving them the opportunity and developing them to give excellence. And for me, I've always enjoyed doing that with people that I've worked with and people that I've been a leader for. And I think that's a definite value that you need to understand the value of the values of the organisation that you're looking to join as well.
It's a very interesting way you put that, potential to excellence. So I can almost imagine that coming out of the football side into the business side. So you take someone who's got potentially some talent, but they need to have it channeled and guided and coached and the rest of it.
Yeah, 100%. So, it's probably the strongest value that we have at Southampton. We're known, I suppose, if you were to ask any average football fan in the world, and you ask them about Southampton, they'll say they probably will come back with, they're very good at developing youngsters and they've got a really strong academy. And, over the years, we've been able to produce players like, Theo Walcott, Gareth Bale, Alan Shearer, Matt Lettiz, Oxlade-Chamberlain more recently, and Luke Shaw. So there's players that have come through our academy that have gone on to either be successful with us or successful on the sort of global stage. We've absolutely taken that value from football and worked that through the rest of the business. And we have, it's a strong value because I think, sport and if a sports organisation like us, we've been around for over 100 years, we've developed those values significantly and they've matured over a long time. Whereas, some other organisations out there, that are not football or not sport, they don't have those values so much sort of within them. So for us, it's very important to be able to leverage that and kind of percolate that through the rest of the business.
Yeah, you make me wonder. I mean, when you're hiring someone, do you look at whether they've played sport or not and what kind of sports they've played to see if they're a right fit for your culture?
Not personally for me. So in the IT team, we're a mixed bunch really. Some of the guys will, we have played sports. Some of them are really not into that, and it's not important for me. But yeah, I think obviously if you're going into a sporting role, yes, you would probably have to have had some interest or understanding or qualification in sport. But yeah, no, not at all. The cultural fit for me, again, it goes back to the people, and I think, yeah, we speak to candidates, and we have done recruitment recently around just making sure that individuals that we're looking to bring in fit the culture. We do ask them about our values and whether they understand them or what they think of them. So once they're able to speak about that, we're able to sort of understand whether or not they'll be a good fit or not.
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking while you were speaking is that maybe not playing sport is important, but being involved in things where they've had to collaborate with others. Because most of what we do now, specifically when you're working remotely, is being able to talk and share and trust other people. Where it's okay to be an individual, but you've also got to be able to collaborate as a team. And there might be different forms nowadays. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. we've actually brought in a couple of people into my team in the last year that we haven't been able to meet them for, they've been working remotely. So they've had to develop those skills remotely and try and grasp the business remotely as well, a bit like myself. So yeah, I think for us, it's all around, communication is a big thing for us as well.
So what has been, you came into the role 18 months ago. You feel now that you're settled, I think, probably 18 months down the road. What are you feeling like 2021 is going to be for you?
Yeah, I think I started talking about it earlier. So, I started in November before the pandemic. So I had about 3 months to orientate myself and meet everyone that I could try and meet and really, get going as I was sort of planning. And then the pandemic then came in and we had to all work remotely. And actually at that time, March 2020, the whole of football was stopped for about 3 months. So it was a huge slap to the business. So yeah, for me, my priorities changed as, a lot of people across the world. And yeah, I think for us now, where we are a year later, I'm just looking forward to getting back into the stadium a bit more regularly because, most of our staff are still working remotely 100% of the time, working with the team in person. And as I said earlier, for us, our operations, our normal operations are having match days and having fans. There aren't that many businesses out there that invite 30,000 people to their head office every weekend, but that's what we do as a business. And, looking forward to just getting that back, as we were. And then next season as well, we'll start in August, September. So yeah, just looking forward to the season kicking off and hopefully having a full stadium of fans.
I hope so too. Just another question. The information security side or the cybersecurity side, does that fall under your remit? Or is that a separate role in the organization?
Yeah, at the moment it does fall under our remit. So I suppose that's probably an area that we've tackled head on in the last 18 months since I joined and had a bit of a strategy around that. So yeah, we look after it and sort of driving a lot of change across the business at the moment in that space. I think going forward, as we mature, it'd be something that we can hopefully have a separate role for. But yeah, we've got a couple of technical roles in my team that work in security, and then also myself sort of driving the maturity forward. And we have other people in our wider division that are experts in legal and risk and things like that. So we work quite closely as a team around cybersecurity.
Yeah, the reason why I asked the question is that obviously the amount of people you have come into the building are potential, I don't want to say invaders, but there's always the opportunity for something to happen. But being more remote now, you're also not physically checking out your stadium stuff, for example, or your office stuff. How have you managed? Have you had people going into the office to do pen tests and that sort of thing, or has it been mostly on the remote stuff?
Yeah, I mean, from I suppose a couple of aspects really. So we've done a lot of work on sort of cybersecurity maturity over the last year anyway. So we've just gotten through Cyber Essentials. So there was a lot of work that we did around that, and we've rolled out some new technical controls as well. So we upgraded our firewalls. We've rolled out different security versions of 365 and kind of I suppose improved all the technical stuff that we can. We do have regular pen testing anyway every year. That's kind of one of our things that we do, and obviously work off the back of those recommendations. But yeah, physical security. I mean, the stadium. We've got two sites: so the stadium and the training ground. They're both physically locked by our security team. We have a physical security team there, so people gaining access is fairly well regulated. But yeah, there's always that added risk being a football stadium that, when we have 30,000 fans, that fans potentially can get into areas that they shouldn't do. We did have an incident a few years ago where before I joined, apparently, where some fans broke into our office. I think they were just drunk. So they didn't mean any harm, but I think it was just one of those situations. I think, we look at how we can improve security, and it's more safety of people, making sure that they are safe. And we've got quite a big CCTV system, which my team look after as well. So we're reviewing the relevance of that at the moment, and what improvements that we may have for that. And I think if you've probably seen the news, you look at what happened at Manchester United a couple of weeks ago. They had fan protests break into their stadium. So it shows that it can happen. And I'm not sure, those fans weren't interested in doing any sort of cybersecurity crime, but they certainly were there protesting. And I think it just shows you that you need to be ready for anything.
Yeah. Do you guys do anything around business continuity planning and disaster recovery plans and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of those things that we worked on in the last year, especially with the pandemic. So we've got a cybersecurity partner that we work with now, where we are doing cloud backups of everything. So we've got an offsite, we've got new offsite backups for everything, as well as our site to site and other backups that we have. That's obviously really important from a security perspective. And in terms of business continuity, I think just like a lot of businesses, when all of the staff were being told to work remotely at the start of March last year, people were trying to roll out business continuity, in real time. And you kind of made it, there wasn't a business that were ready for that, I don't think. So I think that it was just a case similarly for us, just getting our staff working and then reviewing what we need to improve next time, and just adopting, new ideas into those plans.
Yeah, I think everyone's been running in business continuity for the last year, but you almost need to have a new business continuity flavor in case you never go back to an office, where you would have almost the old-fashioned way of doing business continuity, 2 different sites and whatever it is. I think we're in for an interesting change in that sense. What are your thoughts on working from home versus working in the office versus a hybrid, sort of half and half or 2/3?
I think it's really interesting, actually, because I've heard this discussion probably going around for the last 6 months or so. And I'm starting to think slightly different things about it. So, I think let's go back to, before the pandemic. Tell me what business didn't have some kind of, remote working capacity. Most businesses offered remote working to staff. Most businesses offered flexible working to staff. Most businesses were adopting some cloud in some way. And I think, yes, the pandemic accelerated a lot of that for businesses that were left behind. But I think going forward, I don't think there's going to be I think there's already been a shift. I don't think there's going to be a shift. We're not going to suddenly go, right, now there's a line, we're now all hybrid working. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's very much based on the business that you're in, the industry that you're in, and it's whatever works best for you. So I think for us, we've got two locations. A lot of the people that work for us need to be at those locations to do their roles, not from a technology perspective, but from a people perspective. So I think we'll see, that happen, and people will go back, and but also because everyone's been working remotely for so long, we've now got digital practices that we didn't have before. People, the adoption of Teams went up, from just a few tens of people to everyone in the company within a month of the pandemic. So now everyone uses that as their central kind of comms platform. So I think, we'll see those practices brought into working from the office. So I think it's such an interesting discussion, because I don't think there's one rule or one fit for any business, really. It depends on how you need to operate and how you have been operating. And I think those businesses that have publicly come out and said, all our staff can now work remotely forever and we don't need an office and all that, but that's their use case. That's their priority, and that's what they want to do. But it's not going to work for everyone. So I think, for us, it's going to be, let's get back in. But then we know now staff, at the end of the day, staff now have better remote working digital skills. That's probably been the best benefit from it.
Yeah, it's definitely pushed everyone up to the same level, or at least a general common understanding of how it could work and what's possible, which is great. I think we'll maybe end it up there. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, I think all good, really. Yeah. I was going to tell you a story actually from yesterday. It's a digital story that you might laugh about, and it just kind of made me laugh this morning. So I was out with my wife and two kids yesterday, and we had a day out, and we were having a picnic, and we were just about to sit down and have lunch, and I looked at my phone, and I had a notification saying that one of my online cameras had been offline for an hour, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay, the internet's probably gone down at home, don't worry. So we had lunch, and then I had a few minutes, so I thought I'll quickly check the camera now, see if it's working. And I clicked on the notification, it went into the camera, and I could see the camera at home, which is the one in the lounge, so I could see everything in the lounge, but I could hear in the background a high-pitched alarm, and I was thinking, well, hang on, what is that? So I was there on my phone thinking, right, okay, let's check the other cameras. So I checked some other cameras that we've got in the house and outside, and I could hear the alarm as well. And I didn't know what the alarm was. I could think inside it's only going to be the smoke alarm or something. So there I was sat there. We were about half an hour away from home. I was thinking, hang on, is my house burning down? I said to my wife, I said, can you hear that alarm? I said, there's something going off at home. Did we leave the oven on? Did we leave the hob on or something? And I thought, I can't see any flames. And then I checked our thermostat at home to think, I'm really paranoid now. I'm going to check the temperature in the house. And it was normal. So I thought, okay, it's not burning there. But then I thought, what do we do? Do we go home now and find out what's going on? So luckily, my wife's mum and dad were in the area, so she could see and again, another digital solution, she could see Find My Friends on an iPhone, that she could see where they were. So she called them and said, you've got a spare key, can you go in and see what the alarm is? We can hear an alarm on the camera. Anyway, so 10 minutes later they arrived, they came in, and they found that it was our digital doorbell, our front doorbell, smart doorbell, had somehow reset and was beeping really like a fire alarm for some reason. Never heard it do that.
A feature, yeah.
And they called us back and said, no, it's fine. I think there's been a power cut, and I think that's what's happened. It's just reset everything in your house, and that kind of explains why the camera was offline for an hour. So I just thought, when I got back home yesterday, I thought it's so funny. If we didn't have any of these digital products at home, we wouldn't even know that was happening.
Yeah. And
we've got them all in as a solution, but they caused me a massive problem yesterday because I just had no idea what was going on. So yeah, I just thought it was funny, and I told my team this morning because I just thought I was in a bit of a predicament yesterday. So
I could totally relate to that. So I've got cameras back at our house in the UK, and I've got a camera that's on the car, because obviously the car's still with us. But it's got a solar panel to charge. But when I put the solar panel up, I wasn't really sure if it was on the right, but it was charging, so I left it. But it got to a point where it obviously was not charging just enough. And I had to get a friend of mine to go and move the solar panel to get the right sun. But it's like, it defeats the whole object of having cameras at your house, because if it doesn't charge, it's going to run out of battery, then I'm going to lose the eyes anyway. So you're still dependent on some manual intervention, which is where you were with your parents. You needed someone to still go and check on the house, which maybe, if you didn't have all the technology, you wouldn't worry about it. So
yeah, it's made me think, do I need to add more, sensors in the house for the future and find out in more detail what's going on? But yeah, it just occurred to me that, my wife said, she doesn't really get involved in any of these things. And she said, well, you've got all those cameras at home. You don't, you shouldn't need to watch them all the time. And yeah, it's just funny how we have our homes now as, IoT everywhere and smart devices everywhere. Yeah. And they become really ingrained in our lives. So just a really interesting. No,
it's a great story, because the other thing that I want to do, which I don't know if you've looked at, is having smart switches that turn the lights on and off. And because we've got a really nice kitchen, dining room, lounge area, but the sun comes in there. So as the sun comes over in summer, you get sunlight from about 11:30 till 7 o'clock straight into that room. But people leave the lights on, and it bugs me. So I want to get smart light switches with solar detection to see the strength of the sun, and dim the lights appropriately to 0, and then bring them up as the sun goes down. The lights come up. Complete hobby fetish. So I can understand where your mind is. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, I'm always a bit of an early adopter for consumer technology, I must say. So I'm always, if I see something that's cool, that's not too expensive, and I'll try it out.
So what do you think you're going to do? You're going to add a backup system to your current system, 2 doorbells?
Yeah, I don't know. I think with that, now we know what it is, then that's fine. But we do, like a lot of homes, you have a smoke alarm anyway, don't you? You just have them. They're not necessarily smart, but everyone has them. So that's exactly what I thought it was. So you kind of you're just hoping you never have to use it at all.
Well, exactly. I mean, you almost want to have that 3D representation of your house on your phone, so you can see a 3D representation. You can see the smoke alarm going off or not. All the sensors that they'll tell you what's going on in each room. Definitely with the dream.
I think a lot of modern homes, I'd imagine, now have at least some sort of integration built in, I'd imagine, for smart tech. As I said, it's a bit like our football stadium where, it was built 20 years ago. Had it been built 15 years ago or 10 years ago, it probably would have, better fiber connected into it, or, better ducting and things like that for wiring. So, it shows you how the age we live in now is not been, we haven't had so much in terms of connectivity hasn't been a huge thing until the last sort of 10 years or so. So it just shows you how quickly everything's advanced. Yeah,
it's funny because the house we got in the UK, it was a new build, and they actually put the Ethernet cables in. It was one of the reasons why I wanted that house, was it was a new build, and it fascinates me when you go and look at a house now, even one that's built in the last 5 years, and they haven't done it, you're like, but surely people should know by now that you need these things, especially with like 4K TVs and 8K TVs. You can't really push that stuff over Wi-Fi, or you're not going to always get a great experience out of that. So the speed of some of the stuff isn't pulling things along fast enough in other areas.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
What's the best way for people to get hold of you if they want to get in contact?
I'm on quite active on LinkedIn, so just search my name on LinkedIn, and I get a lot of messages on there. Try and respond to as many as I can, and just feel free to drop me a message or a connection, and that's probably the best place.
Sounds good. Thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Right. Thanks, Ryan. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.